All right, so if I could get you to turn to the book of Ecclesiastes here. Ecclesiastes, going to be here in the third chapter here. And the way the joke goes, this guy's driving out in the country. He's going past this farm. Farms, got the barns and everything. He's got this apple orchard. And as he's going past the apple orchard, he sees a unique sight. Never sees this before. There's a farmer out there with a pig and about a 5-rung step ladder. And he notices the farmer picks up this pig and he climbs up the ladder with the pig, holds the pig up to one of the apples. The pig takes one of the apples. He climbs down with the pig. He puts the pig back on the ground and he just waits for the pig to finish eating this apple. Then he picks him up, climbs up the ladder and does it again. So this guy, he stopped and he's watching this for a few minutes. And he just gets out of his car and he walks up to the guy and he's just watching this go on. And he says, sir, it would be a substantial savings of time if you would simply climb up the ladder by yourself and pick all of the apples and you could just throw them down to the pig and the pig could eat them. So the farmer looks at the tree, then he looks at the pig, then he looks at the guy and he says, well, what's time to a pig? So we see the joke. You guys got the joke. Center Village, they didn't get the joke. Okay, the joke is that it's the farmer that doesn't understand time. He's spending a lot of time on this thing. So that's the joke thing. A lot of us have trouble understanding time. We waste time, or we don't understand how much time we got. We start rushing through things we don't need to be rushing through on, or we go too slow and things like the things that we need to be doing starts piling up. We got all kinds of things that we're supposed to be doing. We just don't seem to have enough time to do the things we need to be doing in life. And in short, we just don't use our time wisely at all. And if you think you don't have enough time, well, you're kind of right here. We look at there in James. We don't go to James 4:14, this famous one. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. So before we start getting upset about the vapor thing, remember, I'm 70 years old, so my vapor time has been a long time. So we got a lot of time here in the vapor thing, but at least we have enough time to do the things that we're supposed to be doing in our lives that count here and stuff. So this sermon is not going to be, I'm not going to give it to you as an idea of an efficiency expert, like here's what you do and you can save yourself some time doing this, or save your time doing that kind of stuff. It's not about this. But the sermon is going to be about how we should be using our time to please God. We don't do that all the time there. So. Now, we've got to realize this, and here we are in Ecclesiastes, the third chapter. There's a lot of things that demand our time there. So we look at that in chapter 3 and in verse 1 here. He says, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. So you get extra credit if you listen to the birds on the way home and listen to that song. But that's where, everybody's shaking their heads. Yes, that is a cool song. All right, number 2, verse 2. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, and a time to war and a time of peace there. So we're looking at that. All of these things that Solomon lists here, they're important in our lives. They're things that we need to be doing and stuff on that, and they're necessary to get done. So where do we find the time to do these things that we're supposed to be doing here? So I just want to start off with, before I get to what we're supposed to do, let's look at some stuff, reasons why we don't have enough time. Things that that causes us to waste a lot of time here and stuff. Okay, the first one is being slothful or lazy. Let's go over to the book of Proverbs, the preceding book there, and we're going to see that being slothful is a big waste of time there. We waste a lot of time just being lazy here. Yeah, we're in chapter 10 of Proverbs. We look at verse 4 and 5. He says, "He who has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a wise son. He who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame." You know, he's slack hand, he's poor because he's not doing what he needs to be doing. He's goofing off and all this. And this thing, it's the amazing thing about this, being lazy drives the person that's being lazy crazy, because they still desire a lot of things there. We look over in Proverbs, the 21st chapter, points this out here. In chapter 21 of Proverbs, and in verse 25, he says, "The desire of the lazy man kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. He covets greedily all day long, but the righteous gives and does not spare." The desire, he desires this stuff, but he's not working for it. And he still wants it, but it's not coming to him. So it's causing him a lot of frustration. They don't seem to have enough time to get things done because they don't spend their time getting things done. We look over here in chapter 24 of Proverbs, chapter 24 and verse 30 of Proverbs here. And this is a big example. It says, "I went by the field of the lazy man, in the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding, and there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Its surface was covered with nettles. A stone wall was broken down. And when I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man." So we walked out there and you see there's tons of things that you could be doing, and he's not doing any of that stuff. And it just starts piling up. And why is it piling up? Because he'd rather be sleeping or goofing off than actually getting things done there. Now the lazy person has excuses, no doubt about it. We look over there in chapter 26 of Proverbs, chapter 26 and verse 13. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever had that. You know, you have somebody that's having trouble getting things done, and you make the mistake of giving them some suggestions. Here's what you could be doing, and what's the reaction is? It's never, "Hey, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that. Maybe I'll follow that." That's the opposite. Bam! "Oh no, that won't work. I got some other stuff. You don't know what's going on in my life, and there's a whole bunch of variables here that you're not considering. I can't do that stuff." They got excuses really quick. We look in verse 13 of Proverbs 26. "The lazy man says, 'There's a lion in the road. A fierce lion is in the street.' I can't go out there and work. If I can leave the house, I'm going to get eaten by this lion." Who wants to get eaten by a lion? So I have an excuse, and it's rock solid. Well, the thing is, you could have excuses, but still, there's your vineyard all covered over with stuff that you got to clean up, and you haven't been able to do it there and stuff. You know, so we look at it. Then this is, put this down here. It's kind of similar to us. I don't remember if you had that in school when you were a kid, that the teacher would give, "I got this project for the entire class. You got 6 weeks to get this project done. And it's going to be due on Monday, 6 weeks from today." And what do? If you're like me, I waited till Sunday night, the day that was due. And boy, I was working and driving my mom crazy, because I go, "Hey, help me, Mom. I don't know what I'm," she's researching stuff. And we're up till past midnight trying to get this thing done. And it was really sloppy work and everything. And I've been going as I'm doing it. Says, why didn't I just do this the first week, a couple of hours every week? I'd just been nice and relaxed and had this. But no, I just goofed off. It was just like, had to get all that stuff done. We look at the solution here we find for this is in chapter 6 of Proverbs, back at the beginning there. Chapter 6, in verse 6, we look at this. He says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard." Look at ants if you want to figure out how to avoid being lazy here. It says, "Consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain overseer or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer, and gathers her food in the harvest. So how long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? Again, here we see this. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. We don't need to be waiting for somebody to tell us to get something done. If you go out there, it's like that thing about the lazy man's vineyard. You walk out there. Do you see things that needs to be done? You don't need to have somebody tell you, hey, you got to trim those vines and stuff. No, you just see it and you do that. Ants they have never identified the foreman ant in an ant hill that's getting all the ants working. Ants grow. They just go and they just do things, and they're constantly working on this. We don't need to be told what we need to be doing. Now, rest again, though, is very important. You need to be resting, but we got to be working on that balance here, getting things done when we're doing it, and then resting properly. We don't want to be going one way too heavy on it, and that's another way we waste time, is by being too diligent in our work here. And it's kind of strange, but we're talking about serving the Lord here on this. Some people can make money in the proper way. They're really smart people. They are educated or whatever. They know what they're doing. Education means whatever you're doing. If you're a good mechanic, you're educated in that. All right? So you're doing things. You know what to do and stuff. They work hard. It means they show up and they get their jobs done. There's a lot of people that are really smart with money, and they make a lot of money just being smart with it and that. And they're going to end up being successful. But then you have the other people that they just work like crazy all the time. Instead of a 40-hour work week, they're putting in like 80 hours a week, and they're working all the time. They sacrifice a lot to try to make this kind of money here, and they sacrifice a lot of things for this. They sacrifice like friends. They sacrifice their family. You maybe have heard of that, where some guy is really successful and his wife and his kids never saw him all the years that he worked. He just was always going out there working on that stuff. And they also sacrifice church. You never see them because, hey, I'm working here on Sunday, getting things done and everything. I don't have time to come in for service and stuff. They spend all that time. We look there in Matthew, the 6th chapter, in verse 24, and Jesus is saying, like, no one can serve two masters. He says they're either going to hate one or love the other. They're going to cling to one and they're going to despise the other. Then you cannot serve God and mammon at the same time there and stuff. So this attitude toward money is really destructive too. That's the bad thing. At the end, where they worked it all this time to get this money, it turns out to be detrimental to them there. We look there in 1 Timothy in chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, and chapter 6 is a good chapter to look at when you're talking about money here and stuff. We look in verse 6, he says, now godliness with contentment is great gain. We brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness here. They're looking to try to solve these problems through money, and he said, no, you need to be switching this over and looking toward God and spend your time working on pursuing righteousness and that stuff. Better to be looking for God. We see that back in Matthew chapter 6 in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, first seek the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you, and it's righteousness. We're still working, but we're working for the right thing here and stuff. And besides slothfulness, there's other things that we use up our time on. And at first glance, they seem really innocent. But in the end, it can be detrimental to our spiritual lives. And all I'm talking about is activities. All the clubs we join, all the meetings we got to go to, all the sports leagues we get involved with, all the hobbies. And it all starts out looking like a good cause, but if we not control it, we can find our lives in a frenzy. I don't know if any of you ladies, the moms, were you the chauffeur for the kids? Were like Kathy's, yeah. You know, you spent more of your time in the car with the kids because you had to do, you know, you're going to one thing on this day and you got to go a couple places, and then the next day you got another couple clubs for the kids. You got to get up. Well, I don't know if you got to get up really early because they got practice really early and you're doing all that stuff. And I know parents, we appreciate you guys. The kids appreciate you being at the game, but you really didn't care about the game. You know, they're just standing there cheering. You got to cheer them, so there you are freezing to death. But if we can't control these things, it's going to drive us into a frenzy here and stuff. And we're not going to be happy, and we're not going to be content. And I'll give you an example that personally with me. I was into Civil War reenacting. And I tell you, I was shocked, Andy, that there was not more people interested in Civil War reenacting. It's just cannot believe that. Once you fire off one of those cannons, you're hooked on that thing. But it started out like a couple of weekends here and there and stuff, or something. It wasn't that hard stuff. But then the guys in the groups were going like, oh, man, we got the reenactment at Gettysburg this year. We got to make that. Okay, yeah, we got to make that. We got Antietam coming up here. We got the anniversary of Shiloh. We got to do all that stuff. And after a while, you're going like, oh, we got the Carnifex Ferry, West Virginia. Carnifex Ferry, West Virginia. Yeah. Robert E. Lee's first command. Oh, yeah, we got to make that one. And all of a sudden, it's every weekend going out there. And my wife actually became a war widow. She never saw me for the whole summer and stuff. Whereas, you know, you can really stretch it into May, or March and that, because you're down south. The weather's nicer down there and stuff. We got like that with baseball leagues, soccer leagues. That was a thing we noticed over there in Delaware County, going over there to Center Village, that we passed in this one elementary school, and it's Sunday morning, and it's like 9 o'clock, and you pass the school, and the parking lot's filled, and every soccer field has got all the kids playing, and all the parents lined up in there, and it's Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, and I'd be going like, oh, you guys aren't in church services, are you? He says, no, got this soccer game we got. You remember that? I can even remember this time. Wednesdays and Sundays, you didn't touch those days. You didn't have any kind of activities on those days because everybody was at Bible study on Wednesday and everybody was at church service. Now there's more people. I wish we had that crowd. There had to be a couple, 300 people there for this soccer games and stuff. You know. So we're looking at this. You know, and I thought our temptation would be something evil. You know, that you'd be ashamed of. But I didn't think it was going to be bowling leagues is what I'm going to lose my soul over here because I'm spending all that time there. But it's a championship, and we got to have your kid there because we want to win this championship. Yeah, so we do that kind of stuff. And it's a tremendous amount of pressure on our time there. So we're looking at that. So speaking of temptation, we got to look to see the biggest waster of our time is, and that is sin. We go back over here to Proverbs, the 5th chapter, and we look at this example. The writer here gives us the biggest waster of our time, and he spells it out for us here. So we're looking in chapter 5 of Proverbs in verse 1. He says, my son, pay attention to my wisdom. Lend your ear to my understanding that you may preserve discretion, and your lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps lay hold of hell. Lest you ponder her path of life, her ways are unstable, and you do not know them. Okay, for you ladies, remember that Proverbs is a book written to a young man. That's the reason he spells it out this way. But I think, ladies, we can change some words here make that woman into a man? And there's a lot of women that have made terrible mistakes by who they've dated, who they've hung out with, who they decide to marry. And, your track record isn't very good. I'm getting who's the latest serial killer these women are all sending cards to. They want to marry these guys. They go, the guy is in prison. What are you doing? And they're just picking these guys up. I always told the girls, I said, do not adopt any sick puppies. I don't want that guy in here that just needs the right amount of love and he will turn around. I said, no, you deserve to have the best person. So if Nate's acting up, send him flying. Or, it's like, don't you mess with that stuff. But I thought worried about my granddaughter. She loves pickup trucks. I'm going like, great, it's going to be some guy with a pickup truck who's going to win her heart. I said, we should probably get her a pickup truck, her own, so she doesn't have to have that temptation. But we're looking at it. Okay, so we're looking at it. Verse 7 now. Now, therefore, hear me now, my children. Do not depart from the words of my mouth. Remove your way far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the cruel one, lest aliens be filled with your wealth and your labors go to the house of a foreigner, and you mourn at last when your flesh and your body are consumed, and say, how I have hated instruction, and my heart despised correction. I have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ears to those who instructed me. I was on the verge of total ruin in the midst of the assembly and the congregation. You see that in verse 9. You go through these things. You give your years to the cruel one. Years of time. When people commit sins and stuff, they just have wasted all this time. Some people end up paying a bunch of money for that. Other guys are like, they're in jail. They're in prison. I've had some of these guys, you're listening to they're getting sentenced in court when I was at the federal courthouse. And they go like, yeah, he was 20 when he first got in trouble, and he had to spend like 5 years in jail. Then he got out, committed some crime, went back into jail, and they gave him another 15 or so. Now he's like 40. Now he's back again, and he's going to take another 20 years. When the guy finally retires from that, he's going to be in his mid-60s, and he's lost his entire life. What did you spend it on? Oh, I was in this cell. I was at the yard here at the penitentiary, and that's all I did. And other people, all that money that they have, they make some stupid mistake and get involved in the wrong thing, and all of that's going to pay for other stuff, and it's all that money's gone. Because money, or an object, you look at whatever the object is, you're looking at it, how much does that cost? And that means how much time did you have to work to get that? A car, how many hours did you have to work to get that car? And you can add that up. How many years or how much time did you have to spend to pay for your house and stuff? So and these guys are just pitching it all away. What a tremendous waste of time there and stuff. So we're like, engaging in sinful activity costs us dearly in time. So I want to get to our final point here, which is, why do some people feel that serving the Lord is a waste of time? Or there's other things that your time would be better spent on. In Mark, the 12th chapter, we see this in a couple places, but Mark 12 in verse 28, he says the greatest commandment is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. But then, when push comes to shove, there's a lot of people that put God second or third or fourth or something. They got other things come ahead of God there on that. And then in Malachi, the first chapter, the people are just showing, Malachi's just warning them about, because these people are just showing such contempt for God, even about their attitude of worship. In verse 13, they actually say, oh, what weariness it is. It is so, we got to get up and come in here for services. And it's like, whoa, and we do this kind of today. We have to be careful of it. A lot of folks that do that have this discussion of, do we have to? Can you show me in the Bible where I have to do this way? I have to attend services, or I have to do this. Or the question is like almost, what is the least bare minimum, barely acceptable by the skin of your teeth thing that I have to do, because that's all I want to do for the Lord and stuff. Just get by. We're the day of judgment, God's going to just say like, okay, you can come in. That's good enough for them and stuff. We fail to see the benefits of having a relationship with a loving God that wants to take care of us here. We're constantly using up all of our time, going for other stuff, and neglecting God, and we fail to see that if we go to God, we're going to get that peace that we need here and stuff. That's what a lot of people, they're working constantly for money and getting goods and stuff, because they think they're going to be secure and they're going to be happy when they get all that stuff, and they don't realize they're just causing them all kinds of grief to begin with. We look there in James, the 4th chapter, in verse 1. He says, "Where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have, because you do not ask. And you do not ask, and you do not receive, because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." And then we look down here. It says in verse 6, it says, "But he gives more grace. Therefore," he says, "God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up." There. All these people working so hard to get this stuff. And I think about, you war in that, how much money has been lost making war. It's got to be a bigger number than trillion. But I think about that when I read some of these. Is it the Solomon Islands? They call it the Iron Bottom Sound, where they had these naval battles during World War II, and the hundreds of these ships that were sunk in the bottom of this channel was all of these warships that have been sunk over the years, and like how much of those things cost and everything, how much we spent on that. Everybody's fighting for that stuff instead of turning toward God. You want to work to find peace. We see that in Philippians 4, in verse 4 through 6. He says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, make your requests known to God." And then what happens? The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and mind. When we're looking for God and we're coming to services, being around people that'll help us out. Plus, we're going in there and we're helping them out. That's a big thing too. There's a lot of people who go like, "Oh, I don't get much out of church services." Well, you need to be putting stuff in, helping people out there. It's not just getting that stuff. That's not what we're here for and stuff. But we spend all that time doing the worldly things when we can just do so well with just being with God there, and he would comfort us on that. And when you've got that comfort, you don't need all that money. When you get to that thing of peace, you are the richest person on earth, because the people that are really struggling to try to make money, they're still not at peace on this there. We need to spend a lot more time on godliness. In 1 Timothy 4 and in verse 7, 1 Timothy 4 and verse 7, he says, "But reject profane and old wives' fables, and exercise yourselves toward godliness. For bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having a promise of the life that now is and that is to come. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance." It says bodily exercise profits us a little, but godliness is profitable for all things. It's profitable. It means it's of value. It means it's time well spent be doing this thing on this stuff. So we're looking at that. All right, so that pretty much is my lesson here, how we use our time to serve God. We don't want to be wasting it. But we look at there, again, another thing about an invitation here. In Acts 22:10, Paul is talking about his conversion, and he mentions about time. That he's, because he's out there on the road to Damascus, getting ready to cause all kinds of trouble, and he gets blinded by the lights. He talks, Jesus talks to him, tells him to go into town. It'll be told to him what he must do. And then Ananias comes and visits him, talks to him, puts his hands on him, and his blindness goes away. And this is after Paul has talked to Jesus, said he's Lord, goes into town, and for 3 days he's not eating, he's not drinking, he's just praying. And what's Ananias say? Hey, you got things all taken care of. No, he says, why do you tarry? Arise, be baptized, and wash away your sins. Now, if we kind of did this, in modern terms, he's going like, what are you waiting for? Or I remember it was John Wayne. He says, what's your hold up here? We're burning daylight. Let's go. Let's get this done. It's important we get this thing done. Time's a wasting, and we want to take care of that thing. Or not just being baptized. I mean, this is what do you do when you've fallen away and had troubles on this? We don't wait for a better time. That's what the problem with Felix was there in Acts 24. He says, at a more convenient time, I'll talk to you. What's a better convenient time there? 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2, it says that now is the accepted time. Now is the time we want to obey God. We don't want to be waiting for next week or next year or when we're doing better. Once we get this bowling league stuff taken care of, we can dedicate ourselves to God here. So that's the lesson, and I hope take the things. I appreciate all the interest in that. So we offer the invitation. Anybody we could help anyway, come forward. Let us know while we'll stand and sing our song of invitation.